good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Rachel Paling, and this is my podcast. And we are exploring the topic of what is language coaching. And today I'm absolutely delighted. We have a lady with us who has great experience in the language field, but has also moved into new areas. And I'm very happy to hear from Emma Sue Prince. Emma, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm absolutely fine, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, thank you for being here, and really would like you to explain to our listeners your, let's say, your journey through language learning and what you're doing now.
Yes, of course. Well, I have quite a sort of eclectic journey. I started off as a language teacher, English language teacher, and I studied languages, but I didn't stay in general English for very long. I very quickly moved into business English because at the time I was working with the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and they were doing all sorts of language assessments in companies, and so I found myself very early on in my career going into these big companies and doing language audits and working out what kinds of skills people needed, and particularly what kinds of language skills they needed. So I then kind of rapidly went into lots of different things. So mainly in business English, and I have done a lot of qualifications development, working with various awarding bodies, linking into employability, and then my biggest love and my passion, which is soft skills. I've always integrated business English with soft skills, and I found myself moving more and more into that field. And I think what's been interesting for me is that my early experiences of all of that, the industry still is, I should say, but the industry in terms of the soft skills and business English at that time was fairly unregulated. So it gave me a lot of freedom to do lots of different things. So I would sort of say yes to all kinds of projects, not necessarily having the experience, but I kind of learned as I went along. So it's been a really rich career for me. And in the last, I would say 10, 15 years, I've done a lot more consultancy. So I've traveled a lot into emerging economies. So first it used to be Central European countries, Balkan countries and Russia, and then more recently, much more into the Far East and Asia, and working with employability skills and working on big government projects, donor-funded projects. So really, really, really interesting. And then more recently, I've written a book about soft skills and developed a workshop on that. So I would say my career has moved and changed so much, and I've been really fortunate to had so many different kinds of interesting experiences.
Wow. Emma Sue, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking what a fantastic journey of experience. As you said, this coming into projects that maybe you at that time were not familiar with, but you then grew and really came into those areas and you've developed it to where you are today, which is this soft skill consultancy, which is amazing.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes. Very fortunate, really, really fortunate. So it's been great.
Yeah. And how, in all these years, how do you think that the language learning industry has changed?
I think there have been a lot of changes. Ranging from everything from how we teach, the methodologies that we use, to the emphasis on different aspects of language which differ in various parts of the world. I think now there is a much stronger lean towards including the softer skills within language development. And I think this is something that actually teachers have been doing for a long time. It just may not be very explicit, but I believe that trainers and English teachers and business English teachers, and we have all these different labels for ourselves, but I think they have been finding themselves more and more having to deliver a whole range of softer skills, and I think that's been the biggest change. So that's one of the biggest changes has been that move from language to employability and soft skills that I've seen. And the other major change, of course, is technology, which has completely transformed how we might deliver things. And, I deliver lots of webinars now, and when I first started doing that, it was terrifying and complicated, and now it's so easy, So the way that people access language learning has changed completely. And also, I think another change is the way companies invest in training, and there's a big move now a big shift to learning on mobile devices, and so people are looking more and more to easy ways to access this kind of learning.
Yes, and you're right. I think firstly, I think a lot of the teachers, the trainers out there in this field, intuitively have adapted through the years and are adapting. And I think, this global accessibility is incredible. I share with you the webinar experience, and you and I were talking about the pod experience, the podcast experience of all of that we're doing is new for us, but it's phenomenal because we really can connect with people all over the world. And I think in that respect, we're very grateful to modern technology. We also are very cautious of where it could take us. But yes, I do agree with you on every level there. Now, what about language coaching? So
coaching, I think coaching is quite a big term. And if I could, before I talk about language coaching specifically, if I could just talk about coaching generally, because again, like business English training used to be, not so much now, but used to be, and certainly like soft skills are now, there's no regulation for coaching. I know there are qualifications, and I know there are, courses that people can do, but globally and generally, there is no real industry regulation. So this means that you can, anybody can actually set themselves up as a coach. And I just want to give you a little example of this, because I myself am not trained as a coach. I have no coaching qualifications whatsoever. But because of the workshop that I deliver, which is quite experiential, we do some follow-up coaching. And that follow-up coaching is literally, it's meeting with the person and talking them through some of the feedback and looking at ways that they can bring some of these skills into their work and into their lives, and but it's called coaching. So that's just an example of how I don't have a qualification, but I can I could, not that I would, but I could call myself a coach. So coaching is unregulated, and there are lots of different kinds of coaches. There are career coaches and life coaches and development coaches and love coaches. I mean, you can literally, any kind of term you can think of, there's a coach for it.
That's right. Yep. That's right.
So now we have language coaching. So I think I think there is a current trend towards language coaching. I think that also is probably being driven to some extent by the market and to some extent by the fact that trainers will go into perhaps a corporate environment, or they're working with people on language and on skills, and then there is a need for that very specific coaching and support to help that person. And I suspect, I don't know, and maybe your listeners may well know more about this than I do, but I suspect that the language coach is actually doing a lot more than just coaching on language.
Right. Well, as you know, as my podcast is proving, there are many, many, many different opinions and many different aspects that people are doing as a language coach. And here it's really about embracing and respecting all of them, from the academics to the real hands-on. And saying, well, what is the definition? Is there a definition? There isn't a definition, as you said, and it's not regulated. So we have those bodies. We have the International Coach Federation, the European Coach Board, that are driving the standards, if you like, of a profession and trying to keep a uniformity. And I think that's really the case. How can we all come into some type of uniformity where we are adhering to some guidance, some standards, some competences, etc.
One thing I would just like to add here as well, because it's been my experience of working with English language trainers and business English trainers is that because of the way that they are trained in terms of methodology and facilitation skills, people who have been trained with Delta and, or beyond, and have quite high level facilitation skills, these teachers and trainers are really, really well equipped and I believe, have the really, really good attitude and approach around the kinds of things that I do with soft skills, because obviously that's also, soft skills is also not completely regulated. And I find that the teachers and trainers I work with are really good at being able to adapt and being able to make use of their methodology and their training to really deliver amazing sessions. And I think that's also the case with coaching. So what I'm saying, I guess, is that, although it's anyone can go out and call themselves a coach and all the rest of it, I think that language trainers and people who, because we do, I'm not the only person who's had such a varied journey. Lots and lots of trainers are doing all kinds of interesting things, and as you say, they have adapted and they really work to their strengths. And I think that is what actually makes them great trainers and makes them probably great coaches. They have that natural sense more than perhaps other people because they've had that training and that experience. And I think it's really important to point that out, because I do come across coaches in other fields who don't, they're not teachers. They've never been trained as teachers or trainers. And so they're not as good, actually, I have to say. Yes.
No, absolutely, I agree. When I started with business English coaching and legal English coaching, it was very much that sort of approach of adapting to the clients. And, that's how I developed as well. The experience and the training that we all have steers us into that, I would say, adapting, molding, and really coming into the needs of each and every client, because they're all different. And it's that question of, how do we then either enhance it, or what other skills can we add, or what other, let's say, information can we bring in to help that learning process. So yes, it is. And you're right. There are thousands and thousands of trainers, teachers, educators who are brilliant. And as I always say, there are many who are intuitively coming into the coaching side.
Yes.
And it's a worldwide phenomena. It's not only a European phenomena, an American phenomena. I'm getting people from all over the world who are intuitively demonstrating some amazing coaching skills.
Yes. I think that's
without realizing it. It's wonderful. So, how do you see the future of the language industry?
Well, I always say, and those who know me, I always say the future is soft. So, I believe very much that the skills that are uniquely human are the skills that we need, and will be sustainable, and language is one of them. Pearson have done some recent research called the 2030 research, which actually 2030 is not that far away. When I first read it, I thought, that's ages away, but actually it's not. A bit scary. But they've come at it from, the future is not all going to be about automation. But yes, many jobs, they will be automated, but actually that there are a whole set of skills that are linked to most professions that are uniquely human. And so it's those skills that we need to be nurturing and developing. And it's things like, being able to have fluidity of ideas, lots of different ideas, be able to tap into that creativity, that resourcefulness, being able to use empathy, because empathy drives all our relationships, and relationships are everything. So it doesn't matter how much technology there is or how much, automation there is for many, many professions. And I'm happy to say that teaching and training are one of the professions that will still be around for a long, long time, according to this research. There will always be a need for these softer skills, and these are the things that will make people stand out. So if I connect that with language, interestingly, a couple of years ago when I was in India working on an employability skills project, and I was asking people, to define what soft skills are, because that's, if you ask that question, people will come up with a whole different range of all kinds of skills, and one of the skills that they said was a soft skill was English. So they didn't see it as a language skill; they saw it as a soft skill, and that was such a light bulb moment for me when I heard people in India saying that, because I thought, okay, I hadn't thought of it like that before. So I think language learning is intricately linked with how we communicate on all different levels, all different aspects. So for me, it has to be really closely connected with our softer skills, and I think that's where it will just start to naturally integrate and naturally be part of how people are learning and what they're accessing. Because, people can access so much on their own, but there are certain things that need that extra support.
Yes. And, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about, I think it's the Nelson Mandela quote, speak to somebody in a language they understand and you speak to their brain, speak to somebody in the language that is their language and you speak to their heart.
Yes.
And it's really about, in the end, we are all humans, we're all in this together. It's about how we can move forward, making life more sustainable and maybe a happier place for all of us. And the key here is how we communicate, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, there's another lovely quote from, I think it's the London School of Economics, the person leading that at the moment. And he says that, the past is, in the past, work was about muscle.
Yes.
In the present, it's about knowledge, and in the future, it'll be about the heart. I mean, that's not. I'm sure his quote was much more eloquently expressed than what I just said. But I just love that, because I think, what I find lovely about that is that we can get so kind of sort of scared by technology and thinking, oh my gosh, it's all too much and it's over. But actually, what I see more and more really is that people want to connect, and it is about the heart, and it is about. We can use technology, like you said, we can use technology to help us connect more with other people. And I think that's what it's about. People want connection. They want relationships. They want communication. And so, language and coaching totally fits into that.
Absolutely. And then if we add the cultural side and the cultural respect for each other, wow, we've got a full house. And yes, I think we're coming back into our hearts. We're coming back into how to bring a future that's going to help us to connect. We're wired in our brains to be connected, but I always say that we are a holistic system. I deal a lot with neuroscience. I talk a lot about neuroscience, and neuroscience is not about the brain. It's about neurons, the nervous system, and that means we are a holistically connected system. We have neurons in the heart, and many people don't realize that. And and it's wonderful to hear you say that. It really is. And we can only encourage all of our listeners to really come into this type of communication. And this type of working together, collaborating, and bringing out a new way forward. How wonderful that would be!
Definitely.
Wow, Emma Sue, I think we've really brought some positivity and some wonderful food for thought for our listeners. Any final comments before we sign off today?
As we've been speaking, when we first started talking, it was pouring with rain, and now the sun has come out, and I just feel I just feel there's been a great big burst of energy.
Wow.
Into my day from this interview. So
yes.
Thank you.
Wow.
And I hope everyone listening has got some food for thought and some inspiration.
Yes. Yes. And, my final thought is, I know that you're in the UK, and the other day I was so impressed, and I'm sure you saw it. A little boy with cancer. There was let's say, a help message to the world to say, please, we need people to come in and donate blood and bone marrow and things like that. Did you see how many people went to help this little boy, Emma Sue?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
4,655 people were queuing up outside to help this little boy. They were standing in the rain, but they were there.
Yeah, it's so
Wow.
heartwarming.
Oh, it is. It is. So how about we end up our podcast with that wonderful thought that, yes, humanity lives. Emma Sue, thank you so much for today. And
thank you for having me on the show.
And thank you to all my listeners. And join me next time. Bye-bye.